Put your faith in the light.
Hello guys, welcome to another one of my videos. This is Lightblade, and in this one I wanted to do my 11.0.5 updated fast guide for Retribution Paladins. So finally the patch seems to be stable. After a very rough start with a ton of balance issues, the quality of this patch was terrible. A lot of specs and classes were massively broken. As Red Paladins, we had our general Terran rework, which nerfed us by around 3% in all content. But on top of that, we also had other issues like Blizzard forgetting to add the Templar changes they did in the past patch, and our Blessing of Sacrifice could go on a whole 5-man group. It was a wild week. Anyways, everything seems to be fixed now, so let's start with the guide. Okay guys, let's talk about talents. And here I'm going to give you two builds guys, one for Mythic Plus and one for Raiding. So let's start with the Mythic Plus one. On the Retribution side of the talent tree, not much has changed since the last time I made a guide. The only change that I would say that you guys can do is Imperial Legacy. You can swap it down instead of Imperial Power depending on the dungeon that you're doing. Imperial Legacy I like to take if I have to do more priority damage and more boss damage. So there's some dungeons where bosses are kind of annoying. This is a really good place to use Imperial Legacy. And Imperial Power is really nice just to have an extra power in AoE, you know, because Imperial Power does nothing for boss damage. Anyways, those are the only two changes that happen on that side. On the general Paladin tree, there are some stuff that is going to be changing because that's where the rework was mostly focused. So on the top part of the talent tree, we're still going to be taking like all of our Paladin utility, you know, Cleanse Toxins, Fist of Justice, Blinding Light, all the CC that we want, and our classic blessings, you know, Blessing of Freedom, Blessing of Sacrifice, Blessing of Protection. The lower part of the talent tree is mostly going to be the important part here, because we are going to get a lot of talents that are going to boost our survivability and keys. So this is what I recommend you guys to take, you know, a Holy Ritual plus Seal of the Crusader. I know Holy Ritual is trash, but it opens up us to use Seal of the Crusader, and this has a really nice interaction with Crusading Strikes, and it's basically the same as the old Seal of the Crusader, but instead of doing damage, it now does healing. So if you hit 5 things with Seal of the Crusader, you're going to heal 5 times from it, which is incredibly powerful. It does a ton of your healing in Mythic Plus dungeon. You are off healing just by existing there. So other than that, we are going to take a point into Light Force Blessing because it's also a nice source of just off healing by just doing our damage rotation. Now after that, we're going to take all the points in our output talents, you know, Divine Purpose, Seal of Might, of Dusk and Dawn, but now we have like this one point which I call the flex point. This you can put into any other thing here to just use depending on the situation that you are in. Normally I'm going to leave this as Lead the Charge because movement speed is generally good for everything, but you can move it around. So the options that you have are the following. You can put it here in Blessed Calling, so your blessings give you 15% movement speed on top of whatever they already give you. That's in the case of Unbound Freedom, it gives 30 plus 15, it gives you 45. Pretty nice boost in movement speed. After that, you can put it here in Selfless Healer for the ultimate off healing Retribution build, where you have extra healing on Flash of Light on top of healing yourself if you heal someone with it. If you use this, I recommend going with Light Celerity as well, so your Flash of Light is instant cast and it heals for 20% extra. You do lose on some survivability from Guided Prayer, you know, your emergency healing, but you have a lot of more off healing if you want to help your group. Now after that, you can also put it here in Consecrated Ground. This is going to give you a nice utility because you slow enemies in your consecration by 50%. And you also can net yourself some extra DPS because mobs like don't move as faster from your consecration, so they're gonna take a bit more damage. Also helps keep mobs like clumped together, so you can AoE them down more effectively with your Imperial Hammers, you know, from Templar, because the AoE from them is pretty small, so you can get some extra DPS from Consecrated Ground. But now if you want to guarantee that you get DPS from your general talents, you can also go and take Recompense here. This is a bit more degenerate and a bit more dangerous, but whenever you sacrifice someone, you're going to get bonus damage on your next judgment, which is really powerful. Normally you want to sacrifice the tank so he takes as much damage as possible, and that judgment is as strong as it can. If you are feeling a bit unsafe with it, you can also take this talent, which is called Bones of Fellowship, instead of taking your extra duration on Horse on the Templar talent tree, which is going to make you take 20% less damage from Blessing of Sacrifice, making this playstyle with Recompense a bit more safe. But yeah, that's pretty much all on the Mythic Plus talent trees. Now let's go into the raid build. And well guys, this is the raid build I recommend you guys to use. As you can see from the retribution side of the talent tree, nothing has changed. We're still using the basic build that I showed last time I made a guide. On the paladin side of the talent tree, we're using basically the same thing I showed in the mythic plus build, taking most of our utility on the paladin abilities, you know, and some off healing on the lower part. I still recommend taking Seed of the Crusader here. It's just really nice. It's just not as effective in a raid setting as it is in a group setting, because you hit 5 things, you hit 5 people, you know, you heal 5 people. While in raids there's more people, so it doesn't have the same impact. It's still nice to have that extra off healing capabilities. And yeah, we still have that off that point, you know, that flex point that we can put into anything else. You can go into the, you know, selfless healer version to have off heals if your raid is suffering from that. You can put it on Blessed Calling for extra movement speed. You can do whatever you want with that point. And well guys, now let's go to the next part of the guide. Okay guys, now let's talk about stats. So remember, this is just a general guideline. Stats are different for everyone. I recommend to you to always sim yourself for your personal stat weights. Anyways, if you are doing Mythic Plus, your stats should look something like this: Strength, Critical Strike, Mastery, Haste, Versatility. If you are doing raiding mostly, your stats should look something like this: Strength, Mastery, Haste, Critical Strike, and Versatility. So with that being said, let's go to the next part of the guide. Okay guys, let's talk about enchantments and gems. So on your cloak you want Chant of Winged Grace for extra avoidance. On your chest you want Crystalline Radiance. On your bracers you want Chant of Armored Avoidance. On your legs you want Stormbound Armor Kit. On your boots you want Defender's March because it's just nice to have the extra stamina. And on your weapon, depending if you mostly raid, you want Authority of the Depths. It's really good for single target, but if you mostly Mythic Plus, you can go with Stonebolt Artistry or Authority of Radiant Power. Both are pretty good for that. As for rings, the enchantments on rings are going to depend on your stat distribution, you know, but normally any combination of Haste, Mastery, and Critical Strike will do. Now, for gems, the only gem you really need is the Culminating Blasphemite, and after that you need 4 different colored gems in any combinations of Mastery Crit or Haste to use. Also, don't forget to use 1 blue gem, which is going to have Versatility on it, to get the most of your Blasphemite to get the extra critical strike damage. If you have more gem slots, generally any combination of Critical Strike, Mastery, and Haste gems will do. Now let's go to the next part of the guide. Okay guys, let's talk about our consumables. This part is pretty short, but it's pretty nice to mention what you can use, you know. Okay, so for raid you want your flask of alchemical cows. If you are Mythic Plus, mostly you want to get either Flask of Tempered Mastery or Flask of Tempered Critical Strike. For your potion you want your Tempered Potion. For your food you want your Beladar's Bounty, because normally your Critical Strike, well, your highest stat is going to be the thing that you want the most, and this gives you just that. For your weapon buff you want to get either Algari Mana Oil or Iron Claw Whetstone. Both are pretty decent. And for your rune, if you have the gold to spare, you can use your Crystallized Augment rune. Now let's go to the next part of the guide: embellishments and trinkets. Okay guys, let's talk about embellishments and trinkets. So if you are focusing mostly on Mythic Plus content, I recommend you to get double down thread linen. This is just the best embellishment for keys because it's going to give you a bunch of critical strike on a really high uptime, which is powerful for our Empyrean Hammer, so they critical strike and splash damage. Now, if you are mostly raiding, you want to get the embellishment on your weapon, which is called Ascension, and you want to pair that up with a written armor banding so you double the effects. This is really good for raiding because while it does give you random secondary stats, raiding doesn't really care too much of what stat they get. They just want to get a bunch of it, you know, so it's perfect for that situation. Now, as for trinkets, we have 3 trinkets that are best in slots. 2 of them share a slot, you know, so that's the Mark of Kadros, which is better for raiding situations because it just gives you a flat amount of mastery and a nice amount of strength, you know. The other trinket that shares a slot here, and it's better for Mythic Plus situations, is the Skarmorak Shard, which gives you also the same on-use effect, a bunch of mastery, but on top of that it has a nice secondary effect that makes it so whenever you kill something you get passively some mastery. So even if the trinket is on cooldown, it's still giving you some benefits in Mythic Plus dungeons. So remember, for Mythic Plus, for raiding, Mark of Kadros is the better one. For Mythic Plus, Skarmorak Shard is a bit better. And for our second trinket, you know, second slot trinket, there's only one thing that is good, and it's the Arakara Sackbrew. This trinket is just that good, you know. It gives us some nice secondary stat haste, which while we do not prioritize too much, it's just nice to have. And the effect is that we can get a bunch of primary stat stacking up, you know, and it even has some extra damage at the end whenever the spiderlings appear. So just all around a really nice trinket to have. Now let's go to the next part of the guide. Okay, this last part is going to be the basic rotation. So we're going to throw a Judgment plus a Blade of Justice, Execution Sentence, Wake of Ashes, Hammer of Light, Divine Toll, use our Imperial Legacy proc, and then just build and spend as usual, you know. For single target situations, just replace the Divine Storms for Temperance Verdicts, well, Final Verdicts, and you should be doing pretty decent damage. The rotation of Retribution Paladins is extremely simple, guys. Like, you really just have to spend and build, and as long as you're doing that, you are going to be doing huge damage. And well guys, that's going to be the end of the video. I hope this fast guide was useful, and if you enjoy my content, leave a like on the video and subscribe to the channel. Thanks for watching, everyone.